people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
We'll start with this. It's official. Ellie Scotney's world title fight with IBF Super Bantamweight champion Shernika Johnson has been rescheduled for June 10th. A number of interesting fighters are set to participate on the undercard. Ellie Scotney and Shernika Johnson among them.
You all know what the hullabaloo has been about the last couple of weeks.
Ellie Scotney and Shernika Johnson were supposed to be fighting on the undercard of Taylor vs. Cameron, but Chantel Cameron specifically requested that Ellie Scotney and her trainer Shane McGuigan be removed from the show. That's how we got here, on the premise that things didn't end well between Chantel, Shane McGuigan, Barry McGuigan, Cyclone Promotions back when Cyclone was still around.
Cyclone Promotions has since become a defunct promotional outfit, though Shane McGuigan, he does still train fighters.
Quite a few. Bit of negative press for Chantel Cameron ahead of the biggest fight of her career. Most didn't understand her rationale, it being that she's fought on at least 2 shows where Ellie Scotney and Shane McGuigan,
they were there.
Chantel hadn't expressed that Ellie Scotney be removed from those shows like she did the last time. I can only deduce that because this is a show that she's headlining alongside Katie Taylor.
She figured now that she's headlining and she's pivotal to the main event, she's got the juice to have things her way. So she saw it fit to have Ellie and Shane removed.
Mixed reviews in reference to the whole thing. Some question as to why Chantel felt strongly enough to do this, knowing that there would be negative press. Others think...
Some people think it's warranted, some people think it's not.
In truth, none of us have the whole story, so we'll never know. And as a result of that, Ellie Scotney versus Shernika Johnson has been moved to a June 10th Matchroom show that will feature Usyk Kumari versus Ruiz in an eliminator for the British Super Featherweight Championship. Kumari versus Bellew was supposed to take place on April 29th, Dalton Smith versus Sam Maxwell show, before that card was cancelled.
Now it's going down June 10th.
As well as the proposed Nina Hughes versus Shannon Courtenay WBA Bantamweight title fight. This will be Nina Hughes' first defense of her newly obtained WBA title since having won it from then-champion Jamie Mitchell, who beat Shannon.
Shannon lost the belt to Jamie.
Jamie lost the belt to Nina, and now Nina hopes to defend it and retain it against Shannon. The winner of the fight is in line for an IBF WBA unification match with reigning IBF champion and fan favorite Ebony Bridges.
Unification matches in this division are sorely needed. There are 4 separate champions, 4 separate world titleists at 118 pounds.
It's about time. Rising up-and-coming unbeaten heavyweight Johnny Fisher, a fan favorite unto himself. He's set to make an appearance on the card.
As well as 2020 Olympian Siobhan Clarke, who will meet British cruiserweight title challenger Scotland's David Jameson in an eliminator for the Lionsdale belt.
Former IBF champion of Leeds, Josh Warrington, is set to be headlining per preliminary reports.
He's supposed to be fighting Puerto Rico's own Christopher Diaz at the Ovo Arena.
If he wins, that may be a step in the direction of what could be a Mauricio Lara trilogy. Mauricio Lara, who's fighting Lee Wood for the second time. If Mauricio keeps the belt, he may defend it against Josh, provided Josh beats Christopher Diaz.
This is a decent-sized card that should do decent business between the cult following that Johnny Fisher has, the cult following that he's amassed, and the existing marquee value that Josh Warrington has retained over time.
It should do all right. It should do decent business, though I will admit, this card doesn't have the profile that the Taylor versus Cameron card did.
Comparatively, Taylor versus Cameron is a bigger show that will take place in front of a bigger audience than this one will.
Which is unfortunate for Ellie Scotney, who actually looks up to Katie Taylor. She idolizes her.
Though spilt milk aside, she's got a live one in front of her. Shernika Johnson.
I've said it in previous videos and I'll say it here again. Shernika Johnson and Ellie Scotney, they're both good at a lot of the same things, with the difference being that as a professional, Shernika Johnson Johnson has more rounds in the bank. She is more experienced, a more experienced fighter than Ellie Scotney, who you could argue has a higher ceiling than Shernika,
but isn't as seasoned as Shernika.
it's important to note that Shernika Johnson isn't some aging fighter, some aging champion that's getting long in the tooth. Shernika Johnson, for the most part, she is in her prime.
Still trying to wrap my mind around how this fight's going to look. Who's going to be the aggressor? Who's going to be the defender?
And how do both fighters mean to create separation between them? Because I reiterate, they're both good at a lot of the same things.
They can both box and punch.
Box from the outside, fluid, mid-range to inside.
I think I like Ellie Scotney's shot selection a little better than I like Shernika's, but Shernika, she's a tough broad.
Went the distance with shotgun Shannon O'Connell. Fought with a gaping hole, a gaping gash.
Blood all over the place.
Was in the Suzy Q Ramadan fight. Still managed to win a points decision.
She's a tough cookie, a tough customer.
It's very good of Matchroom to have rescheduled this fight in a jiffy, though given the number of shows that Matchroom does on a global scale, rescheduling a fight isn't all that hard for them to do. And this still is a great fight.
Tough to call, though.
We'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. Men's heavyweight news per tweet from Michael Benson. You might have heard yesterday that Simon Jordan revealed he's heard rumors of a mega 3-fight Saudi deal. Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder in December. Then the winners meet. Usyk versus Daniel Dubois and Fury versus Andy Ruiz supposed to happen before.
There are a lot of rumors floating around.
This rumor comes to us by way of Simon Jordan, whereas by way of Big John Fury and Frank Warren, the story's supposed to be that Alexander Usyk is looking to fight Deontay Wilder, not Daniel Dubois, in his next fight. That they're going to see about paying Daniel Dubois to step aside so Usyk can fight that guy next in Saudi.
Could two rumors be true at the same time?
Hard to say when Simon Jordan's version of the story suggests that Usyk versus Dubois is next, and rightfully so, because Daniel Dubois is the mandatory challenger to Usyk's WBA title.
I don't know.
Tyson Fury fanatics, Tyson Fury apologists have caught wind of this rumor that Usyk and Fury will meet later on this year, and they're using this as a crutch to justify Fury's behavior up until this point. But need I remind you that a part of this rumor is that Tyson Fury will be facing Andy Ruiz next in Saudi.
And assuming he does, assuming he fights Andy over the summer months, the question then becomes, well, if you can fight Andy over the summer, why couldn't you fight Usyk over the summer? Don't you remember what the story was?
The story was they moved the fight from Saudi over to the United Kingdom because the Saudis couldn't get the stadium up on time by an April 29th deadline, the proposed fight date for Fury versus Usyk. The story was you guys moved the fight from Saudi over to the UK because things wouldn't be ready by the 29th.
But as a result of moving the fight from Saudi to the UK, the whole goddamn fight fell apart. So for that, you might as well have kept the fight in Saudi and just waited to do it over the summer months. For giving us Fury versus Andy Ruiz, I would have much preferred to see Fury versus Usyk,
even if it meant waiting a little while longer for it.
Remember, in the beginning, that's what the cover story was. They moved it from Saudi over to the UK to meet an April 29th deadline.
Because they didn't want to wait. And as a result of that, we ended up waiting anyway. Now we have to wait until the end of the year to see Fury lock horns with Alexander Usyk. And that's if everything goes to plan.
This is the heavyweight division. We don't know that it will.
This is a very sordid rumor, a sordid affair, though a part of it is a long-awaited, long-anticipated Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder showdown. That's supposed to be a part of it.
I think they're saying that Joshua versus Wilder is supposed to be the co-main event to the main event, Fury versus Usyk, and that's almost too good to be true.
Sounds too good to be true, and you know what I say about things that sound too good to be true? In the sport of boxing, they usually are.
So it is fueling suspicions that the reason Anthony Joshua has decided to forego a summer ring return is because of this rumor that he's supposed to be in a big fight later on this year.
So you can imagine, if it's that big a fight, he doesn't want to jeopardize illness or injury in a summer ring return when he's supposed to have a mega fight towards the end of the year. I mean, that's what the hierarchy of thought would be.
Whether or not he's going to stick to that is unclear.
Well, firstly, I think there's been a few misquotes about he's not boxing till December. He's thinking about not boxing till December. But he's sometimes, and I love Anthony, but he's on holiday at the moment, right? He's having a good time. He spends his life in training camps. When you're having a good time, you like to carry on having a good time. But I know Anthony a bit better than that. So don't be surprised. I wouldn't be 100% surprised to see a U-turn on that.
Barry Hearn is suggesting that it's not set in stone that Anthony's going to wait until December to return, that he might very well return in the summer months. He's just having a good time. There are recent images of Anthony Joshua alongside Amir Khan over there in Dubai. He very much is on holiday.
Images of him alongside Badu Jack as well.
So maybe there is something to what Barry Hearn is saying.
This is all very hard to interpret. I think the biggest problem that I have with this rumor is that it would involve Frank Warren, Bob Arum,
Eddie Hearn, and Deontay Wilder.
Take a second to think about this. Each one of those different promotional outfits has a broadcast partner.
And what this rumor seems to suggest is that you can get a matchroom fighter in the ring with a PBC fighter. At the same time, you can get a top-ranked fighter.
There's also a Queensberry Promotions fighter
in the main event.
And these fighters, at least usually, they box on 3 different platforms. You know, Anthony Joshua boxes on DAZN, Tyson Fury fights on BT in the UK, and ESPN in the US.
Deontay Wilder's last fight was on Showtime, so surely you can see how having that many big names
that fight on that many platforms.
I mean, in terms of broadcast rights, surely you can see some obstacles, some difficulties there. You got a show that features all these guys on the same card.
We don't really know what Deontay Wilder's situation is these days.
Is he even still with Showtime? Even if he isn't, you know, Tyson Fury, he's still a top-ranked ESPN/Queensberry BT fighter.
He'd be in the main event.
Anthony Joshua is a Matchroom and DAZN fighter. According to this rumor, he'd be in the co-main event.
It's a little hard to wrap my mind around how they'd work this out. I mean, it's ambitious, and if they could get it over the line, I'd certainly watch it. It would undoubtedly be billed as a pay-per-view, and perhaps an expensive one, to get that many big names on the same show.
If they could actually get it over the line, I imagine that the price point might look something like $100 to $150.
Now, if anybody has the means and the money, the resources, to get a card as ambitious as this over the line, it really is the Saudis.
Just in terms of bankrolling it and satisfying each individual fighter's financial demands. If anybody can,
they can.
At least in theory. Though with the Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury fight's collapse, a fight that was supposed to take place in Saudi, you'll excuse me if I'm not completely sold on this rumor. This is one of those things to where I gotta see it to believe it.
So on the premise that Anthony does end up sitting out till December, Tony Bellew's got a theory.
Tony Bellew said he was shocked at Joshua's plans, and he says it can only mean one thing. He, like many others, anticipates that move is for a big fight.
But he doesn't think it's for a Wilder fight.
That's not the name that Tony has in mind. He surprised fans and analysts by going against this, announcing that he would be back in the ring in December rather than July, as previously promised. There are plenty of theories as to why. Injuries, trainer schedule conflicts, but the most prominent is that the two-time heavyweight champion has signed on for a big money fight in the Middle East. Bellew buys into that theory, telling DAZN that he thinks WBC champion Fury is next up.
Fury, not Wilder.
Rumors abound. There are only so many ways you can interpret Anthony waiting till December to return.
My thinking from outside looking in is it's Fury. I can't dress it up as anything else. Fury's obviously got to have a fight. He probably said, I want to have another fight before I fight AJ, and it wouldn't surprise me if they said, you, AJ, can't have a fight in the interim because we don't want you to risk anything.
Currently, Bob Arum is suggesting that Tyson Fury might fight former unified champion Andy Ruiz in what many would interpret as a very winnable fight for Tyson Fury. Andy don't got the ingredients for that fight.
But that's the suggestion that Bob Arum has been making.
Tony Bellew continued, I'm surprised because I do know he wants to head back out to Dallas and start training with Derek James again. I'm shocked, to be honest. I think AJ would want another fight, but that is something that Fury would do 100%. They would say, we don't want anything to risk this, and I get it, because it's such a huge fight. AJ's coming off a win.
But if you don't want AJ fighting over the summer because you don't want to risk the fight, then why is Fury fighting?
Well, maybe it's because Andy Ruiz isn't much of a risk for Tyson Fury. Let's just be honest. Andy ain't got the ingredients to win that fight.
These are speculations on top of other speculations.
Rumors based on other rumors. Joyce, ahead of his upcoming fight this weekend with Zhilei Zhang, says,
based on these rumors,
Eddie Hearn is cashing out Anthony Joshua.
That's his interpretation of it.
At a time when Anthony Joshua is supposed to be breaking in a new trainer and being in the process of rebuilding himself, when he really should be focusing on being more active, if he focuses on yet another mega fight, another attempt to get Tyson Fury in the ring, as far as Joyce is concerned, it's because Eddie's cashing him out.
That's one way to look at it.
I noticed after the Jermaine Franklin fight, he wasn't calling my name out, so he must have been advised not to. I've had enough of Joshua. He's only mentioned my name now. He's on the road to rebuild and find his mojo. I thought he was going to go in and take him out, Joyce said about Joshua's fight with Jermaine Franklin. Joshua is heavy-handed, so I thought he was going to put it on him. But maybe it's the next fight. He's going to turn it on. Yeah, I'd have done a job on both, said Joyce about his belief that he'd have beaten Joshua and Jermaine.
Big talk ahead of this Zhilei Zhang fight.
So is there anything to what Joyce is suggesting, that if Anthony Joshua decides to sit out from now till December, it's because Eddie's cashing him out? I will admit that...
That's one way to look at it.
Well, not necessarily that Eddie is the one cashing out AJ so much as AJ himself may be cashing himself out. Eddie Hearn on multiple occasions has made it clear that he gets his marching orders from Anthony Joshua, not the other way around. That he is, in effect, Anthony Joshua's employee. And if Anthony ends up returning in December, it's got to be because Anthony's the one that wants to.
He's not in Dallas. He's in Dubai.
He's not in Dallas right now. He's not with Derek James. He's not training and mounting for a July return.
Barry Hearn says that he might change his mind, but until he does, this is all we have to go off of.
Immediately after the Franklin fight, I said it myself that I was expecting Anthony to knock the guy out, and he didn't. And what he really needs at this point in the juncture, more than a mega fight, more than a Wilder fight, and more than a Fury fight, is activity. That those kinds of fights should be on the back burner for the rest of the year while he works things out alongside Derek James, because you're not going to become a different fighter overnight. And if there's any benefit to having Derek in your corner, it's not going to show up after just one camp.
I happen to think he made the right decision. There were 3 guys in the running to become Anthony Joshua's new trainer: Roy Jones Jr., Virgil Hunter, and Derek James. Given Anthony Joshua's base style, that he's a boxer puncher, a strong one,
And his physical dimensions, I happen to think that he made the right choice, but he's got to give it time.
before you reap the benefits of enlisting the aid of Derek James, who's been trainer of the year more than once.
At least in my opinion, you need few fights with that guy before it all starts to set in. What you've been working on.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
And that he's not in Dallas right now training with Derek James, well, that lends credence to the notion that he is going to wait till December to come back.
I think it's ill-advised.
I think until he shows some glimmer of the fighter, the strong finisher that he was, he should hold off on targeting mega fights.
If his focus is longevity.
Because if it's not, then he's cashing out.